Hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Joe Carlisle, and this is...
I'm Ken Rose. Nice to see everybody this week.
And this is Tactical to Practical, the Real World Business Show. Hey, look, here on Tactical to Practical, the Real World Business Show, we identify real-life challenges for real-life people. And what that means is that Ken and I bring to you every single week not only tips, hints, tricks, hacks to build your business, but help you understand the tactics that you need to have a successful business, and then try to marry it with practical, actionable advice. That's where the name Tactical to Practical came from, because that's how we run our businesses. So we hope each and every week that you get something like that out of it. We invite you to subscribe and follow. If you are with us on the podcast, we want you to download us. You can find us at www.facebook.com/tactical to practical. So follow us in the links down in the comment sections. You can find us on YouTube and Spotify.
Spotify, iTunes.
Yeah,
all that stuff.
Also, you can reach us. We would love to hear your comments, feedback, and your business story. We'd love to hear your business story, what inspired you to go into business, what required you to go into business, the challenges you have overcome to stay in business, or maybe even the questions you might have in this crazy market about how to stay in business and be successful with a shifting time in the economics that we see today. And you can reach us at...
We're at tacticaltopractical.com.
Info at tactical. Info.
Yes. Oh, well, I didn't know Joe wanted us to do email, but info at tacticaltopractical.net.
Okay, Joe needs a note. Prep your co-host.
Prep your co-host, because your co-host is all over the place.
Prep your co-host. Okay. We're actually kind of excited. We haven't been together in a couple of weeks.
Right. We've been out. Joe's been out.
Yeah, had a great time. One time with my son. In a trip to help celebrate my sister's wedding. Got married during COVID, and so she had the reception / barbecue get together over Labor Day, and we just had a great time. We went for 10 days. I had 2 days in each direction in a car with my son in his truck. He was right; it was grossly comfortable. I'm glad we spent the extra money on gas. Felt a little safer on I-95 because we're in this big truck as opposed to my little Toyota Camry jetting in and out of all those 18-wheelers. But it was a great time. But man, I was wiped last week.
And Joe knows family time. Family time should be limited.
I love my family, don't get me wrong. But even with my own children, when they were in college, they all had their own houses and apartments and stuff. They'd come home for the holidays. Long about 3 days, I'd know it was time for them to go home.
That's it.
That's kind of the nature of life, isn't it? Right?
Start raising a thermostat in the house, turning off the hot water,
eating all your goodies,
locking the refrigerator, letting people know that their time is up.
Hey, I showed a house last night, and there was a lock on the refrigerator in the pantry, and I thought, man, now you could learn some parenting skills.
Yeah, or some spousal skills.
Some spousal skills. If you have to lock your pantry and your refrigerator, you've got an issue. And
you
actually
might have teenagers.
Yes, you probably have teenagers. It was actually in quite a nice neighborhood, quite a pricey house as well. So you see that more in the lower end. But there they just kind of said, hey, this is the way it's gonna be. I think the last time I locked a refrigerator was when I had roommates like a million years ago. So anyway, so today we're going to talk about cost versus value, and how do you price your product or service? What kind of factors go into that? And actually, this show was birthed by Shauna Vaughn of Integrative Sports Medicine. Precision Integrative Sports Medicine had asked us some questions. Taxes are going up in our area, and she wanted our input on how a lot of people are raising their prices. Matter of fact, we've had our Egg McMuffin conversation, right? And I've noticed since the last time I bought an Egg McMuffin at my usual McDonald's, the price has gone up another 50 cents. And so it's $5, to get an Egg McMuffin, right? And it's quick and easy, but at $5, I'll pay the other 89 cents and go down the road to Bagel Brothers, So this conversation was sparked by Shauna Vaughn, who we know through the Chamber, the South Lake Business Leader, great business. And like everybody else, they are in a spot where they have to examine their prices so that they can provide a good product and stay in business. And she wanted to know some of the influences that go into it. So let's talk about that, Ken.
Sure. I remember years ago, one of the print shops that I was at, there was a sign in the lobby. It said, price, quality, service. Pick any two. And I think when people start thinking about raising prices, the concern is always, I may lose some business. And if you look at your financials, you look at your P&Ls, you may be costing yourself money to begin with if your prices don't, if you can't break that price down between cost of goods, services, and everything else that goes along with it, and then what you're selling it for. You have to know those numbers. This actually came up many years ago, Joe. I'll tell you a story. South Lake Little League. And we were pricing for the concession. And a number of families had complained that the price of hot dogs was we were charging too much for the hot dogs. And so what we did was we invited them up to a board meeting and we broke it down. Because the hot dog's this much money and the bun's this much money. Why are you charging? And then we explained, cost versus profit. But we also explained that in pricing for a hot dog, and it's a very basic item, you have the wrapper that it goes in, you have the cost of condiments, you have the cost of propane, you have the cost of rent for the building, electrical for the building, you have the cost of waste, the cost of the bun, and so you have 8 or 10 factors, not just the cost of a dog and a bun. And so when we were able to explain that to people that questioned it, they understood. They said, oh, okay, I didn't realize you have all of those costs. And I think in small business especially, we're always afraid to price too high because we'll price ourselves out.
So I think so often there's an idea of what can I get as opposed to what influences my price.
Correct.
Right? And so many times there are people that are overpriced, and we come and this is almost a conversation. It's kind of like sex, right? It's hard to talk about sex in the church where it probably should be talked about, right? Price is the hard thing to talk about to business people because they think of it that same way. That's
how much you're paying for sex in the church?
Because we don't, because in this country, well, in a lot of places, it's almost like talking about money. Don't talk about what I earn. And in some industries, I understand that. But, I mean, you're a realtor. I'm a realtor. You want to know what I earn? Look it up.
Look it up.
It's not that hard to figure out, right? I mean, what did I sell last year? You can figure out pretty close.
You come pretty close.
To what my gross sales were. And if you have a reasonable assumption of how much of that, and you're probably wrong how much of that I take out. I mean, actually perfect
well, some people want a 50-50 split, 60-40, 70-30, whatever the number is.
I don't think people in general understand that, like when I get a commission, and this fits into the price versus cost.
Right.
When I get a commission, what I take home to the family is usually between 30 and 35%. Okay, because a portion of that goes to my broker, depending on my split. Then I've got my cost of acquisition. Cost of acquisition is what it costs you to get a customer. Okay, and I don't care what business you're in, we all have that cost, but people don't talk about it. And then there's expenses. If I've got a listing, what did I pay for the cleaning crew? What did I pay for the pictures? What did I pay for other marketing that may have been done? What did I pay for exposure? What did I have to give up to get somebody else to come in? Maybe I had to pay another realtor, to come out. And it's the 6%, in general, people don't understand. Well, half of that's going to somebody else to begin with, right?
Correct.
So out of the money that I collect, and we even talk about taxes, I only usually take home about 30 to 35% of what I collect from the gross commission that
Right.
comes to my side. And I think so many times we don't look at those other influences. I spent years in the food service industry, and I worked for a lady once, small independent. She's an Italian food restaurant. She imported for Christmas all these panettone cakes. She had like 100 of them. And she comes to me because she knew I had experience in consulting, and she said, well, what do you think I should charge for these? And I was just a waiter at that time for her, and I'm like, well, what did they cost you? She's like, that doesn't matter. I'm like, yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Well, what do you think people will pay? And I'm like, for that? $10. She's like, I can't take $10. Well, exactly. So the price has to be, before you ordered the cakes,
Mm-hmm.
you should have known what you could charge,
Mhm.
and will your customers pay that? So we talked many times about, and of course she got stuck with 100 panettone cakes because she tried to charge $25 for it. Now today you'll pay $25 for it, but this was 25 years ago. So the question I get into with people is, what influences the price you have set for your product or your service? And many times it doesn't influence those things. They haven't sat down and broken down just what you talked
Right.
about. What is the cost of providing the service? What is the cost of the support of providing the service? What is the cost of follow through with providing the service? What is the cost of wrapping up providing the service?
Mhm.
In I guess in your business, it's people think people just walk in your door.
Correct. Just come on in.
Just come on in, right? Hey, look, we're going to take a really quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive into this subject a little bit deeper.
See you in a few.
See you in a minute. We are back. This is Joe Carlisle
Ken Rose, how you doing, everybody?
on Tactical, the Practical, the Real World Business Show. We are talking today about pricing and cost versus value. Okay, and I think a lot of people mess this up. We were just talking about some of the influences. So when you sit down to figure out the cost of a product, you've opened a business, what should you charge? Well, you've heard that somebody else charges XYZ,
Mm-hmm.
but you may have to understand that that other person has been in business for umpteen years, and you may not be able to initially get the price that he gets.
Well, not only that, but your expenses are going to be different. Is your rent higher or lower? Is your utility bill higher or lower? There's just different incidentals. What type of phone system does he have versus what you have? All of those factors that you have to.
So there's so many people, I think, that what they miss is that, and we have talked about this first. You got to pay yourself first, right?
Always pay yourself first.
If
Rule number one.
If you have a business that you can structure this where you have a regular gross, a weekly or a monthly gross coming in, it's a little harder when you're on a commission roller coaster because there are other temptations. I still agree with that. I personally think that in my case, 30% of my gross check of actually, I get my split. I pay my tithe because I'm a big tithe payer. I pay my tithe, and then 30% of what's left over comes into the family. Okay, now, but there can be influences on that.
Mm-hmm.
If I haven't had a commission for a while, I may have to pay some expenses that have been rolling up on the credit cards. Right. But in general, I try to put 30% off the top of every check back into the family. And I think and you pay yourself. You actually.
I pay myself.
We've talked about how you actually take a salary out of the company, and when times are good, you still get that salary.
Same salary.
And when times are bad, because
Same
you only
salary.
took that salary, you still have money to run the business.
Right.
I think a lot of people forget that. They don't arrive on what is the average profit for my industry. Now I need to build this into my business.
Well, I think not even that, but if you are if you're a veterinarian, for example, what does the average veterinarian earn? Okay, so that gives you a ballpark of what you should pay yourself. That doesn't mean that you take 10 times as much or 1/10 of that. So
That's actually a good starting place to figure out profit, which is why I said in your industry.
right.
Right? So if you know that, and I'm just going to pull a number out of the sky, we're going to use that veterinarian. The average veterinarian makes $100,000 a year, okay, that's in business for himself. I'm sure if he's not in business for himself, he makes somewhat less than that, but his expenses are different. But let's say he makes $100,000 a year. It allows you to reverse engineer again that average veterinarian. So many people come into the real estate business, right? We have a very high rate of failure in real estate, 80% in the first 2 years. I think it's 50% in the next 3, which means in the first 5 years, like 95% of all realtors actually leave the business.
Right.
Or at least put their actually, many of them don't leave the business. They keep their license active and take money from people who are full-time and good at it, right? So, but what ends up happening is, what people don't imagine is the average first-time realtor, first-year realtor, makes about $3,800 in their first year. What is not looked at is the average realtor who makes that $3,800. He's only working about 8 hours a week.
Right.
So you need
Realistically.
So if you reverse engineer this, we're back to the veterinarian. You got to look at how many patients does he see? Where is he finding his patients? How many hours is he working? If you are going to make that average 100,000 and the average veterinarian works 6 days a week, you're not going to make that 100,000 working 3 days a week.
Correct.
So what other influences could go into pricing?
Well, before we jump off of that ledge, I think we go back to having a business plan. Because year 1 and 2 in business, it's going to be hard to determine what your income is going to be. But if you look at years 2 to 5 and do projections like you're supposed to do in a business plan and figure out, I need to make this, what do I need to do to make this? And that's that's where most people fail in business, is they don't do that analysis. I know Lisa's looking at buying a piece of equipment and the payment is X dollars per month. So right away she's like, well, that's a lot of money. So we started to break it down. Okay, well, how many of this particular product do you need to sell to pay for that machine? How many of those products are you selling now, and how much more money can you make by having that piece of equipment? And that's where pricing comes in. That's where determining price comes in. And you could be in a business that you will never be successful here because your price point may be so high that you're not catering to that group of people.
But it's funny that there are some people in our networks that I feel are grossly overpriced. And we've talked about cost versus value. Is I find them to be grossly overpriced, and they never want to. And I never suggest people discount their services, but sometimes you can offer a limited service to be an entry point for other people. So there are some of these people, and I have a very hard time, especially in a tight money situation, in an economy like we're in, recommending them, because I feel that they're so grossly overpriced that there are people in my network that they can get the same service for half the price. So why would I there's one gentleman who I know, he's constantly struggling. Every time I talk to him, and he never wants to hear. We're back to the one thing nobody wants to talk about. He never wants to hear, well, maybe you should look at your price. Maybe you should cut your price, but work more. It's the, there is a tendency for people to price themselves out of the market. And I think this is where people get afraid to raise their price.
Correct.
Right? Is they feel like they priced all the way to the limit, and if they go up any higher, they will lose some business, which should spark a whole nother conversation that says, should you have priced yourself at the absolute limit?
Right.
Because, you had better be recognized as the best in your business, in your area,
Mm-hmm.
You know, the reason movie stars get the money they make is because they're accepted as the best people in that industry. Just the mention of their name is going to put a certain number of downloads, a certain number of butts in the seats at the theater. You know, but if you're Joe Carlisle, when I was an actor, I couldn't command those rates because I might have even been better than a lot of those people. But it doesn't matter because I wasn't recognized as better. So I think many times people price themselves out of an industry. So
easily. No, I mean, getting back to price, I you know, and then discounting, for example, and so on. And here's an example that just happened to me. A potential client called and asked for the cost of a specific job, and I priced out at $329. $329. That's my price. So they went on to say, well, I can buy this online for $280. And I go through my usual spiel. Whatever you buy online, the money goes outside of this town. Whatever you buy here goes on inside this town. And being in business, you have to know the right questions to ask to get the answer that you want your potential client to answer. So we're about $50 apart on price. So my next question was, does that company charge for shipping and handling? They said, well, yes. I said, well, how much is that? Well, it's $40. All right, so now I'm at $329 and they're at $320, and they are a prospect. So what I do, and this is, you could say it's discounting, but I don't believe in discounting. What I did say was, what we can do is we do have a first-time client discount that I can offer you on a first-time order, if that helps you out. And it did, and we got the order. But one thing Joe may have noticed today, we have a very special guest on the show that has nothing to say. But I would like to introduce the Golden Minuteman from Minuteman Press. And what it says on this plaque is, this is awarded for 15 years of dedicated effort in setting the standard for Minuteman Press. And I would never have gotten this award had I not known cost versus selling price, why you don't discount, and why your prices are what they are. So this is testament that the advice that I'm giving is expert advice. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been here this long. Actually, we've been in business 16 years, but they were behind getting a damn trophy done because they didn't order it from our location.
But this actually supports the comment I was making about, are you best in the industry?
Correct.
Are you accepted as the best?
Correct.
Right. And sometimes you have to tell your customers that you are the best. You know, there's a fine line between bragging, promoting, and just stating the facts. Okay. And I deal with this all the time as people say to me, I can say we have something in the realtor business, and, you know, realtors, please, if you have a problem, reach out to Joe at onejoeknows@gmail.com with the comment I'm about to make. I find
hold on to that comment, Joe.
I'll hold on to that. We have a break coming. Okay, we'll start the next segment
with
it.
Thinking about coming back.
Okay, we'll see you in a minute. Don't go away. And welcome back. Okay. During the break, we were actually talking about something relating to this. And before we went, I said I was going to make a comment.
Yes.
Here comes the comment. I find, personally, the $1 million and multi-million-dollar awards given away which is accepted across the country by the local realtor associations to be participation awards.
Yes.
Okay, 50 years ago, when they had $1 million and a multi-million-dollar a year award, it was important.
Right.
Because houses were $30,000. I mean, an expensive house was $50,000. You know, that would be like having a $500,000 house today. So then you had to sell 18, 20 houses to make that million. For you to make multi-million, oh man, you had to be selling the $200,000 houses. You know, those were the mucky muck on the lake, 3,000 square feet. the real two-car garage.
Look, I had an agent sell 1.5 or 1.6 million dollars in real estate for me. They were an agent of mine, and the average selling price of the home was between $70,000 and $80,000, or $60,000 and $80,000.
Yep.
That's a $1.5 million
Right.
producer, not the guy that sells $1.5 million house.
But my take on this is I don't go to them.
Right.
Because I find them to be participation.
Absolutely.
How does that affect our conversation about pricing? When people look me up, they might not see me selling $5 million, but I consult on hundreds of real estate transactions a year. I advise people in other states. I advise people on rents. I advise, even though I don't work with investors, I advise many of them on, not on the sale and purchase, but on what they should charge for rent, what improvements will be valuable to them. Why should they get tile instead of carpet? What kind of law, who do they need to be directed to? Who knows the stuff that I don't know? How many lawyers and accountants do I recommend in a year because of a probate situation? So when I say the reason my tagline is Joe Knows, that's me telling people that I am the established expert
Right.
in this field and currently writing a book called Renter Nation. It's about how we got to where we are. I get frustrated every day. I see stuff, it's all over YouTube now. Everybody's talking about, there's pressures in, this market is shifting and there's pressures in supply. I've been talking about this for 10 years. I've been talking about institutional investors, and people still don't get it, that the rise in inventory and the lowering in showings doesn't mean we don't have buyers. It means a lot of those investors buy sight unseen.
Right.
So that's not going to reflect in showings. It's not really a true number anymore. Anyway, so that's the kind of thing you got to know to determine the price of your services. In general, I get paid more than the average realtor per transaction because I know more. That makes me more valuable, right? When you're trying to determine the price of your services, I would love to charge 10%,
Sure.
but I can't, because then nobody would hire me. Because at that point, it doesn't matter how much I know. Now, maybe when my book comes out and I'm all over TV and, I'm recognized nationally as a real estate expert, that might change.
Well, your rate of commission, your percentage of commission will not change, but the amount of business
That I do
will change. So
will
the net profit changes drastically.
Which brings us to that question all this time, being afraid to raise your prices. Look, you have to look at your price. You have to look at your lifestyle, okay? And if you don't raise your prices, you may have to accept that, like your customers, you might have to bite the bullet about something. And I'm not talking about cutting costs in your business, which you may not be able to do anymore, but cutting some of your lifestyle, okay? I get so frustrated by people who have had it very, very good and they go on like 3 European vacations a year and they come to me practically in tears about how, business is off and they don't know how they're not going to go to, Milan this summer. I'm like, can you please get some perspective? Had a conversation recently with somebody who was telling me about, it's been 20 years. Some of these guys who were at 9/11 should get over it. I'm like, you literally have no clue what they went through.
Right.
No, you have no idea what they went through. And by the way, on a side note, I want to say thank you to all the police and firemen, because 9/11 is what it's about.
Right, exactly.
Anyways,
Exactly.
that's a side note. Thank you guys. We love you. Is that idea that you've had it very well and you might have to step into your customer's shoes. You might have to say, okay, am I willing to make X sacrifice in my lifestyle so that my customers can continue to enjoy my service?
Right.
The other thing you might need to do is understand that you are going to lose some business. how do you step up your game? How do you step up your prospecting game? How do you step up your customer game? We're going to do our next episode is going to be all about prospects. We're not going to go a deep dive in that. I just want to say, I mean, do you agree with that?
No, absolutely. When you raise prices, you are going to lose a percentage of your clients potentially, but you also may make more money. So that's the other side of the coin. I know in my particular business, one of the services that we finally dropped was a faxing service because of the time spent to process the fax, collect the money for the client didn't justify offering the service. Otherwise, I'd have to charge $30 to send a fax for somebody. So that's like Joe said, that's why sometimes you may have to cut service or eliminate a particular service just to be more profitable. And again, your lifestyle. I personally live below my means because that gives me the flexibility. If business is slow, it doesn't pain me as much as if I lived up to my income, up to my means. And so I think that plays a factor in it too. I mean, you can't have your boat, you can't have your private plane, you can't have, your husband and wife cars plus a sports car plus a motorcycle plus a scooter and all these other things and say, gosh, I'm just not making any money. What am I going to do? You just can't raise your price. You have to look at the entire picture. What can I eliminate to create less pain for myself, less pain for my client?
And it's funny because I'm glad you brought that up because so many of us, we love to cut corners, particularly people in retail. I've noticed this in a retail style business, right? Because cutting your personal lifestyle, and if you're in a service-based business, because you get paid a little bit differently, is almost a natural. Right. It's okay, well, I'll go out to dinner less, right? Because I can't really increase my prices per se, okay? But people in retail, they say, well, I've cut to the bone. Well, maybe you shouldn't have cut to the bone in your business. Maybe you should have looked at your personal lifestyle. And there is a truism that we all live up to. You live below your means.
I do. I make sure of that. My parents lived up to their means all the time. And it was always stressful. It was stressful when I lived up to my means.
Right. Right. And so that actually begs that question. What are you not willing to let go to stay in business?
Sure.
And here's the reality, and I want people to understand. Everybody's freaking out because I have to, costs are going up. We've got inflation. I might have to raise my price. This is temporary. It might be temporary for 3 years, but it's temporary. And this is the one thing I learned out of the crashed market. I came into the crashed market, and there were so many guys. I knew we were at a bottom. I could see where prices had started to come up really slowly, but they had started to flip and houses were selling a little bit. It wasn't taking 90 days to sell or 120 days to sell a house. The average number of days on the market had dropped to like 91.
Yeah.
Right. And in that I saw that, hey, so I'm new in the business, but I've been in a lot of businesses in my life. This is going to be over. Might take a few years, might take a while, but it's going to be over. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in if I give this up, I'll give it up forever. You talked about the jets. I was talking to my broker, Steve Miziano, the other day about jet skis. I said, yeah, I had jet skis. I used them twice a year, maybe. I had them. I literally was across the street from a boat ramp, and I never put them in the water.
Right.
It's that, what are you willing to give? What are you willing to look at and say, how much is this costing me? What's the purpose of it? What's the use of it?
What's the ROI?
What's the ROI? Is it you and your wife living in a 3,500 square foot home? Do you need to be?
Right.
Or are you just hanging on because that's where you raise the kids?
Right.
It's completely ridiculous. There is a way. When we are going to come up to a break in a few seconds here, and when we come back, we're actually going to talk about, once you determine, yes, you have to raise that price,
we're going to talk about how to do that.
Talk about some practical ideas how to raise that price. And I think you'll get a lot out of this. Don't go away. This is where the meat is. And we'll see you in a minute.
We'll be back.
We'll be back. Okay, welcome back. Once again, this is Ken Rose.
Woo, and Joe Carlisle.
We're Tactical to Practical. We've been talking today about cost versus value. And the reason we're calling this a cost versus value, we're talking about raising your prices and some of the things that goes into pricing.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, I heard something years ago, and I absolutely have to agree, and it was somebody justifying a 7% commission.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was kind of afraid to justify a 7% commission. How do you ask somebody for 7% when there are guys willing to do it for 5%,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he pointed out to me, he says, one of the reasons why I became an expert, why I started reading about my industry every single day. And he said, cost is only an issue in the perceived absence of value. So which is why I talked about you have to be accepted as the best at what you do.
Right.
If the value of what you provide is perceived, notice I didn't even say is, I says perceived as better, as higher, then your increased cost is also justified. Okay, so we've been talking about all the things that go into price of services, price of goods. What we're going to talk about, you've determined now, you've looked at your taxes are going up, costs are going up. Restaurants, they do this all the time. I mean, the cost of meat and chicken and everything else has gone through the roof. Labor's starting to go up. Rents are up. Although that always amazes me. How does a rent increase, how is that involved in inflation, really? I mean, because the house is still the house, right? It's like, and typically the landlord's not paying for electric and water.
Right. Well, the rent increased because the taxes on that house have increased, right?
And
so you have that. You have.
If you're listening in Claremont, by the way, City Council raising our property taxes 40% might be a little bit too much. And I gotta say, where's the money? All that COVID money you got. I know we don't like that.
That's okay because I'm going to play devil's advocate for you on that. I actually watched the council meeting. Yes, it is a large increase, but the other side of that, and again, running a company is running a company. You have to manage the money one way or another. The other thing is, for 6 years, it wasn't raised. I think the last time it was raised was 2016. So if they had raised it 0.5% every year, or whatever the percentage is, it's irrelevant. It's less painful. But they were trying to help people out, and sometimes in business now, this is where business comes into display, Joe. We're afraid to raise prices because it may affect the people that are buying our product, and it's the same thing that the city goes through. We hate to raise taxes, but and they do all that. Well, we're going to cut this service. Something has to be cut because everything else goes up.
Well, we could have a whole show.
Yeah, that
about
could be like
this.
10 shows.
I've got to honestly say though.
Well, we can blow past this.
We will blow past this. I will say, as devil's advocate, the justification for that is their income was increasing as builders built more houses, and they were getting the benefit of increase. They weren't increasing the price, but they had more volume.
Right.
Okay, so the real question is, should government be increasing the taxes in a time where people are in the squeeze? Maybe they should have thought about that when it was good, but they didn't want the political damage. So there's justifications. Politicians justify everything. I still say you got 2 rounds of COVID money. You haven't accounted for it. Where is it? If you could just show that to me, honestly, show me the money. If that's gone in legitimate areas, well, I might get it. But until you show me that, I'm personally not going to be on that boat. Anyways.
But at the same token, real quickly, because this is a cost of business, my landlord just raised my rent 20%.
Mm-hmm.
So the question could be, well, why? 20% is a big chunk of money on my rent. But at the end of the day, costs are costs, man. Go to a restaurant and ask how much chicken costs.
No, we talked about this morning.
I mean, it is what it is. The city, for example, and I'm not any city. It's irrelevant who it is. Has vehicles, fire trucks, police cars, utility trucks, so you name it. They have to fuel them.
I
You
get
know,
that.
but I know what you're getting to is where's the money.
Where's the money?
And in
Where's the money that was supposed to go to
luckily in
that?
small business, we don't have to give a P&L
Right.
to every client that comes in.
Right. Well, it depends on the business.
But
You know. Anyway, so we were going to talk about
raising prices.
how do you raise the price now? Okay. Do you just? This is actually probably a good intro to this.
Right.
You just blanket say to everybody, okay, it's I don't have enough money, so I'm just going to raise everybody's prices so I can keep my boat, my 2 big house, my 5 cars, and my
Right.
3rd vacation to Europe every year. Right? You're not going to keep very many customers. I think that's the thing that's frustrating about when the government does it is you don't have the choice to say you raised your price, I'm going somewhere else.
Right. Well, you
As a
know
business
exactly.
person, you could, but as a business person, you do have to keep in mind what people might do. So there's a way to raise your prices and a way not to raise your prices. Okay. I personally don't think the way to raise your prices is to go, and again, it depends on the kind of customer you have. Frankly, if my prices get raised, especially if it's blanket in my industry, I'm seeing people once every 5 years.
Right.
Right? I'm not doing business with people every day, week in, week out. They're not paying me. So the cost of my business, when a car goes up, you can go to buy a car and say, wow, that's more expensive, but I haven't bought a car in 7 years, so I guess it should be more expensive. But how much more expensive is it really? Because you expected that price to be more than the last time you bought a car.
Well, Joe, the reality is that the pricing on something that you want is irrelevant. The pricing on something that you need is a factor.
Is a factor. Correct.
And I think that goes towards from essentials to luxuries.
Right.
Which brings us to pricing.
Right. So Ken has some ideas on how to do this. I have some ideas on how to do this. And these pieces of advice are probably going to be more for retail style businesses, people who have a charge day in, day. When I say retail, I mean people who are dealing with somebody in a location that they're getting income week in, week out. You're seeing the same customer over and over. You have a chance for walk-in business, that sort of thing.
Right.
Go ahead, Ken. What's the way that you raise price, or what would you suggest? Give us some suggestions.
Well, every business is different, but to keep things simple for our audience, I'd like to let's talk about a massage business. Let's say that you charge $50 for a 1-hour massage, and of course you have to raise your price. So I've got my regular client that comes in Tuesdays and Thursdays for a massage at $50, massage. Now I got to tell him it's $60. So how do I raise my price without it being painful to my client? And so in this particular example, what I would do is raise my price to where it needs to be, and at the same time offer a package. Let's say the next 5 massages paid in advance for $50 a massage. Now my client doesn't feel the pain of the increased price because they're getting something special because the price has gone up. And then in the next month or two, they're okay with it being $60 because they got the promotion. And I think that's a hell of a better way to do things than to discount. Discounting means, I always say when you discount, what service would you like me to take away in order for you to get the price? And the best example is Vistaprints. And this is because this is my business. This is what I go through year in, year out, day in, day out. Vistaprints can do the business cards for $19.95. Can't you beat Vistaprints? And my answer is simple. What is Vistaprints' turnaround time? Well, it's 21 to 25 days. I tell the client, I'll tell you what, I'll offer the same deal. I'll have them ready in 21 to 25 days. And they're like, but I need them tonight for an event.
Well,
so, sometimes you have to flip the table on the person that wants to discount. Real estate's the same thing. When you're working with sellers, can you discount your commission? So the question to the seller is, what service should I discount? Should I not do as much internet marketing? Should I not do an open house because that's an expense? Should I not do this? And their answer is, well, no, I still want you to do all those things, but I want a discount. And that's why I don't think discounts work. Coupons are okay, I think.
Do you know, and that was actually going to be my next idea. You know, what drives me crazy is there are several big companies out there, and they're on TV, and, you know, we are, Ideal Agents is one of them. You know, we'll give you real realtors in your area. And, you know, I mean, I can pay them, right? And people don't understand that. I can pay them to be on their list, and I have to meet certain criteria. And their criteria isn't terribly high, I have to say. It's usually based on amount of transactions, which is not necessarily a good match for what you want, okay? Because, you know, if you want to be ignored or passed off to some kid who's, you know, the ink is still wet on his license because the guy who signed up with Ideal Agent is a leader of a team,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then the fine print, you know, the guys always say, oh, I saved $24,000 on my last commission. Well, do the math. In the fine print, it says minimum commission for houses under $150,000 is $3,000.
Right.
They do it for a 2% seller side commission. You're still going to have to offer 3% for the buyer side, so you're actually paying 5%, not 6%.
Right.
The 1% that you're saving, think of what it takes to save $24,000 on 1% savings. I mean, you're a multi-million-dollar house.
Right.
And the guy that they're interviewing, you could tell this guy never owned a multi-million-dollar house, right? So it's a straight lie. But it comes to when you discount, when you're comparing yourself against those big guys, you have to be able to let your customer know, like you said. I mean, are you going to be available to them at any time? Okay. Are you going to be, I mean, my customers can reach me at 8 o'clock at night,
Mm-hmm.
you know, on a Saturday. You know, go ahead and use your Ideal Agent. See how often he answers the phone after 3 o'clock.
Correct.
You know, see how often he answers the phone before 10 o'clock. See how long it takes him to return a message, right? It's not going to happen.
Absolutely.
So one of my ideas, as you mentioned, is coupons. And we talked about this the other day. I had a friend, I learned about coupons, real creative couponing, from a guy I knew that owned a bunch of rentals back in Denver. And the guy felt he had a need to raise his rents from $600 to $700. But he knew he was going to have to do it. Again, he knew his numbers. He knew where his business was going. He knew he was going to have to do it down the road. So what he did was he announced a $100 a month increase. Now this was 20 years ago when that was a hefty
Mm-hmm.
number, okay? And what he did was he gave all his existing tenants $1,200 in rental coupons. And you could use those. The idea was, I'm raising the rent $700 now, but because you're an existing customer, I'm going to give you a $100 coupon for every month for a year. So the rent is actually coming in at $700, but his existing companies were only customers, his tenants were only paying $6. The benefit to that was when a customer left, all right, he could, the next people coming in were paying $700.
Of course.
Okay, it wasn't expected they'd get
Right.
$600 because it
Sure.
was $700.
Very
Okay,
smart.
so he wasn't charging two different rents. But the thing was, they could use that. They could use it all in one
They
month.
get a free month.
They could get a free month. They could use a whole quarter where they cut their rent in half.
Sure.
You know, I mean, they could use it however they
Very
wanted.
smart.
When it was out, though, it was $700 a month. And I was amazed at that because my only experience with coupons before that had been in the restaurant
Mhm.
industry, where they give away a coupon for a free entree. And the only people that came in were people who, coupons are great with existing customers. But they would put in the newspaper and they'd affect the income of their service staff.
Mhm.
And they'd overtax because they get really, really busy. But coupon people didn't tend to buy in the restaurant industry. What you're doing is you're attracting people who aren't going to normally buy in your restaurant anyways.
Right.
You know, they come in, they share water, they have two entrees, and they're out.
Right.
You know, and they're not even out fast. You know, maybe they buy, you know, a dessert. right? So I always thought that that was a great way to do couponing in a business where you give services. You want to raise your prices to your existing customers.
Right.
You can anticipate that price increase. You can announce that price increase,
Sure.
but you're a hero because you just gave them a coupon to account for that price increase. And in that way, you're actually raising your price before you need to. And I think that's something else that is not done enough. You mentioned, what if they had raised the percentage a half a point a year? Yes, you're right, and that should be built into your business plan. You should not go 10 years and never raise your price because you're going to lose business.
Right.
When the point comes that you have to raise your prices. Nobody will object if your price goes up 25 cents per year to a now, as long as you're smart enough not to then use all of that money.
Right.
You know, you don't want to be in that spot down the road. Other ways to raise your prices to not scare off your customers. Lose services. You have to be able to look at your business and see which services you're providing that aren't making you money. You know, so often I can remember when the breakfast items at McDonald's was pancakes with sausage. They did the Egg McMuffin and the hash brown. And man, they did bunches.
Of course.
Bunches and bunches and bunches and bunches. And I honestly have to look at their massive breakfast menu now and wonder what on there actually, a lot of that was added because other people came along, like Burger King or Chick-fil-A came along and started doing the chicken on a biscuit.
Right.
Something on a biscuit. Somebody else, I think it was Hardee's, started doing something on a biscuit. And so they added the biscuit stuff to there. And look, if you love McDonald's biscuits, great. But my point is, so often we do something because somebody else is doing it. You have to see how much business did that attract you.
Right.
And is it profitable business?
Well, that's what I said earlier about eliminating the faxing service. It was a loss leader all the time. But as we're closing out this show, I think that our next episode is really going to give you the tools to make your increases. But now, how do you build on that? But in closing, here's really two things, Joe. This is my best advice I can give anybody in regards to this. If you can justify raising prices, raise prices. If you can't figure out why you should raise prices, or you don't have the numbers, or you're not confident in why you should raise your prices, then don't raise your prices. That's really it. If you're waffling, should I raise them? I don't know. What am I going to do? That's not a time to raise them. But if you can justify why the price needs to be raised, raise the damn price. It's just that simple.
And I'm back to, if you're going to raise the price, you better be able to justify the value.
Yes.
Which is why I say you might need to lose a service.
Right.
One last piece of advice raising prices, and Ken and I have talked about this. We haven't gone deep into this for this particular episode, is bundling. You can bundle packages, right? We'll go back to the massage business. He talked about a package of massages, but maybe you have a bronze, gold, and platinum package, and each one has a different list of services with a different price point. And that, when you bundle things, people don't see the price increase as much. Maybe they're getting a savings on if they add up all of the services, but you're putting in their services you may not sell that much.
Correct. Or they may be higher profit services.
Higher profit services. And,
anyway.
If you're selling shoes, you're going to sell the shoe, but if you have a package that includes the shoe shine and the socks and a pair of shoe holders, which are the upsells, or your high profit stuff, that you may sell more of those items, and then your price increase on the shoes might not be so recognizable. So anyways, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you coming in. Look, if you have any advice, tips, feedback, anything you want to tell us,
questions,
info@tacticaltopractical.net. And we both will respond to those. Well, we
We both have access to the email.
have access to it. So if you want to talk to one or the other, address it to us. Look, just like you, we're building a business here. So we're giving you advice out of our experience. But if you see something that needs some addressing, please let us know. We're open. Anyways, we'll see you next time on Tactical to Practical. I'm Joe Carlisle.
And I'm Ken Rose. Thanks for coming by, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye-bye, and we love you. Okay.
Time out.
Time out. Okay. Woo.
Yep. Yep.
He's got 134 of them.
What's up? about 10 minutes. So.
Say what?
Maybe about 10 minutes.
Oh, no, it's good.
No, just cutting some stuff with the.
Oh yeah, you don't want my hands around that. Nope. No, I like my fingers. I've actually lost enough pieces of them on slicers.
Nice.
And mandolins. You think once would be enough of that? 25 years in that business, you know you got to do 3, 4, 5 times. You have the hand cut those? Well, no, I mean, you have the hand cut them before you put them on there? Oh, yeah. What, put it up, hold it? Hold it up. Yes, I was. That's just because I'm an old guy. Yeah, you're trying to become an influencer because you're a different city. Yeah, I'm good. No, maybe once. You know, I will tell you, my son, when he was on, yeah, my son went to a private school, and he was $10,000, he got enough scholarship. And he wasn't a football player or anything like that. He was just an average student. Actually, he went on an athletic scholarship his first year, and he gave it up. You're saying, and it's all because he spent 6 to 8 hours a week working on scholarships, writing scholarships. He has the time to see it. And help students. No, I didn't say lie. I didn't say lie. I said, look, here's the deal. You're gonna change your mind about who you are. And I know this. Because I'm 60 years old and I change my mind. Every day. What do I want to do? Great future is not exactly because tradition in war. Okay, are you gonna live off campus? Okay, so it's not fucking you. Great future takes place. Look, I gotta tell you, full rides. And so, just go, when they say it's nothing, there are costs that will come up. Because the school has figured out your operation, they still want to generate money. They don't get the same thing from great teachers that an average non-grade. Yeah, that sucks. Of course, I knew he was going to call. Why? Because I got the IRS letter yesterday.
No, it's always going to try.
Hey Tom, this is Joe Carlisle. Not too bad. How you doing, man? Yeah. Same thing. Haven't managed to close much all summer, but I'm sure that'll change. I'm working with a couple of hard customers now, so hopefully in the next couple of months. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay.
I did all this too for you. No.
Uh-huh.
All right. So, everything today or? No. Okay. I'll tell my lady. She's good. She's shaking up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's actually exactly what I need. Again, I reached out to you at one point. Again, I didn't push you to call you a dozen times, but I think in June or July, I reached out to you at one point and left a message. But it come down to I jacked up my hip. I got sick. I think
when did we start this? Back in May. I was just coming out of COVID, and I jacked up my hip. And then the market shifted, and all of my buyers, who I thought were closing all summer, you know, I had buyers and sellers. I mean, I should have done 10 million in volume by now. Hello, are you there? Hello? Okay. I should have done 10 million in volume by now, and I haven't. They all flaked, you know, and so some of them I'll have next year, but that ain't helping me now. So yeah, anything that I can get time-wise, and this is a priority for Patty and I. You know, it's not like I'm out buying cars or anything. As a matter of fact, I'm still trying to get the final check on my my truck, my 1995 Ford F-150 that was in mint condition, was in an accident, and they gave me $6,000 to buy parts, thinking I might be able to get it done. Well, they only gave me a $10,000 value, and they said, well, we can't determine if we can get it fixed. And I was like, you know, it'll take us 2 years. I was like, well, give it to me. Well, then I put it to my own guy. They had never lifted the hood, and it turns out it's not just body damage. I mean, it was T-boned in an intersection, bent the frame. And so the two guys I had it to said, this is going to be $15,000 to replace, so, or to repair. And so I'm trying to get Allstate to give me the rest of the money. And that'll certainly go towards this, you know. And so ideally, when we get to the push comes to shove, I'd like to try to pay half or somewhere in that neighborhood. What are we at, 15,000? What are they asking for? Yeah. So, I mean, if I could get it down to 7 or 8, that I'd consider that a win. You know, and frankly, if I had the cash right now, I'd tell you, just go back to them and see if they'll take that. Right. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, and certainly just stay in touch with me. Just give me as much time as you can. And in the meantime, you don't have any probate